Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Handford, and my wife, Dennae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. Before we get started, let's hear from one of our sponsors. Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HandfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HandfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HandfordCapital.com.
Hello, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Tough Decisions podcast. This is your host, Dennae, and once again, I'm flying solo today. Dan, as I mentioned last week, is working on closing up a couple of deals here before the end of the year. And so my contribution to those deals is overseeing the Friday podcast so that he can focus on those things. So I'm looking forward to talking with you today for just a few minutes about some different ways to increase your productivity. You know, as entrepreneurs, as people, I think in general, who have goals and aspire to accomplish things, we're always looking for ways to increase our productivity. And we all have only 24 hours in a day, but the way that we use those working hours can make a big difference and can mean the difference between achieving the goals that we have and not. As a busy mom and also business owner, and I have interests other than being a mother as well, that I'm always looking for ways that I can accomplish more and I can learn more and I can do more, because there are so many things that I want to do and that I want to be good at. And so I want to share an article that I read on entrepreneur.com. I don't know how many of you may or may not have reviewed some articles on this website before, but I found this article and it shares 9 ways that we can boost productivity that will make us a better, leader, even a better teammate, because in a lot of cases we have people depending on us. So I want to share those with you. And some of them you've probably heard before. Maybe some of them you already implement on a regular basis. But if you're like me, you're always looking for new ideas. And generally there are things that I can still do to increase my productivity if I just am a little bit more disciplined, or sometimes I hear a new idea, or sometimes something clicks a little bit differently. So I want to share those with you this morning. The first way that we can boost our productivity is to track our time. And this may be a little bit tedious for some people, but when we start to realize how we're using our time, then we tend to be a little bit more accountable for how we're using our time and what the time that we are putting into, different projects. It can be a little bit disheartening if you, for example, maybe log into Facebook and then look up at your computer and 45 minutes later, you haven't really done anything except look at cute animal pictures and watch videos of people making a fool of themselves. Hopefully we don't spend a whole lot of our day doing that, but that can happen very easily. And it can also happen with our work. We can get started on a project and we get lost down a rabbit hole somewhere and we don't realize it until it's too late and we've lost a lot of time. So tracking your time and the things that you're doing, and maybe even, determining ahead of time about how much time you think should be put into that project. What's it worth to you? How much time do you want to invest in that project? And then tracking that time so that you don't spend more than that. It would be a really important step to take towards increasing your productivity. And then the good news is they also make softwares out there now, apps that you can use to help you with that. The second suggestion for increasing your productivity is to use the do not disturb mode. A lot of people now are aware of the do not disturb mode on your phone or your devices, whatever kind of device that you use on a regular basis. Pretty much all the smartphones now have this do not disturb mode. And really it's designed for, resting, sleeping at night without distractions, but you can also use it during your workday. A lot of times we don't realize how much time we waste when we just look up and look over at the phone and read the text message that just came in, or look at the email that just popped up. They also make these features that you can put onto your email and your computer, and almost, like an app on the phone, but you just add it to your computer, your desktop, and will keep your emails from coming in. And that way you're not distracted by that little chime that lets you know that someone just sent you a message. I've done this before just by simply closing down my email. And so that works as well. But say yes to the do not disturb mode. Put that do not disturb mode, and don't feel bad about not answering people within 5 minutes of their text message or their email. That's something that I have sort of convinced myself of, and I try really hard to continue to practice. I don't have to answer someone within 30 seconds or a minute of that text message. Just take yourself back 15 years ago when the main way to get a hold of somebody was through a landline telephone, and if they weren't home, then you were out of luck, right? So it's not like the world cannot go on and cannot function without you responding to that text message. We've gotten ourselves into such a habit of being able to get everything we want right now that, we feel like we owe that to other people. And then we also tend to feel like people owe it to us. I'm not saying ignore people. I know sometimes there's urgent, pressing business that has to be taken care of, and I get all that. Customer service is a really important part of what every business does, and your customers are obviously drive the business and they pay the bills, so there is a need to respond in that way. But the nice thing about being an entrepreneur and being someone that is in charge of your schedule is you can carve out times where you don't have to feel the need to respond immediately, and it's going to be okay. Life will go on. The earth will not stop spinning if you wait 15, 20, even 30 minutes or an hour to respond to an email or a text message. So I think that, we have to train ourselves to think that way. And maybe sometimes we even need to train the people that we work with to understand that we're not going to always respond right away. It doesn't mean they're being ignored, and it doesn't mean that it's not important, but it does mean that we're trying to be productive with the time that we have, and making the best use out of that time requires us to sometimes say no to other things. Number 3, in steps to or ways to improve your productivity, give yourself a break. A 5 to 10 minute break to stand up, walk around. There have been quite a number of studies done that show that just that 5 or 10 minutes to stretch, give your mind a little bit of a break, will increase your productivity while you're actually working. There are several methods actually that incorporate these breaks. Probably the most famous one is the Pomodoro technique. If you've never heard of that, Google it. It gives you a lot of ideas on how to implement that. And I've used this when I have a large project that needs to be done. You basically break it up and you work for 25 minutes and you just put your head down and you get as much done as you can for 25 minutes. And then I'll set my phone actually for the timer to go off at the end of 25 minutes. I'll give myself a 5-minute break, walk around, get something to drink, stretch a little bit, and then I come back and put your head down for 25 more minutes and go. And that has been something that's really helped me when I have something that's very pressing and that I'm going to have to spend a long time on, and I'm going to have to get it done, then that's a technique that's helped me. I think it works well for that because, sometimes when we know we have a big project and we know we have something that's going to take a lot of time, and maybe it's something that, feels a little bit daunting for a 1-day or 2-day project, sometimes we tend to put it off, or we say, I just need a little break. And 5 minutes turns into an hour, or 10 minutes turns into half an hour, or whatever it is. This is a way to give yourself that break and give your mind a chance to rest, but also stay on task by breaking it up in that 25 and 5 minutes, 25 and 5 minutes, and so on. Number 4, ways to improve your productivity. Say no to pointless meetings. Now, if you're not in a management position, you may not have a whole lot of control over this, but I think one thing we could all be better at is not accomplishing things in the most efficient way and not always having to meet to do something. You've probably all seen that Facebook meme that goes around that says, it shows someone showing a very annoyed, disturbed face, and it says, I just came out of a 2-hour meeting that could have been a 10-minute email. There's lots of things that we can do via email, via chat and that kind of thing now that don't require meetings. Now, I'm not undermining the need for face-to-face meetings. If you've listened to any of my Sunday podcasts, you know that there are times when that face-to-face meeting is the best way to accomplish something, and those are needed. We all need face-to-face interpersonal interaction. That email, work chat, all of those softwares that allow us to chat back and forth right away, they don't take the place of face-to-face interaction. But that being said, sometimes having these big meetings are not really accomplishing a whole lot, and they're just wasting time. Number 5, let other people help you. If there's something that someone else can do, another team member can do, and you just need to trust that person to do it, then that might be something that you need to hand over. And you don't have to do all of that. So don't be afraid to let other people help you. Number 6, focus on the necessities. And I think the best way to do this is to make sure that at the beginning of each workday, you have a list. The things that have to be done, the things that you would like to do, and the things that if you finish with all that, then you will start working on. That's typically how I break mine up. Things that I absolutely must get done today, things that I would really like to get done today, and then, a few things that I can add to the list. And that way I'm making the most use of my time if for some reason I get finished. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that, we're all getting everything done every day. I know how that goes. But it is always good to have that backup there because you have a goal and you have a place to go and you know where you're headed after you finish those must-dos, if you will. 7 is similar to the one we talked about earlier, but step away from your desk. Walking, napping. There's a lot of companies now that have implemented optional nap times in the afternoon, but definitely being able to walk around. We're in an office park now, and throughout the middle of the day, you'll see people walking around, and I know that's what they're doing. They've just gotten up. Plus, it's a good way to get out of your office and not just out there for the physical exercise and the physical benefits and the way that will help your productivity, but also being able to look at things from a different and better frame of mind. When you get out of the office and you start moving, a lot of times your brain kicks it into overdrive. Even though it's restful, that allows your brain to work a little bit differently and puts you in a better place where you can look at things more creatively, maybe find answers that you haven't been able to find before. I go back to the interview that we did with Cliff Oxford, which is one that we did fairly early on back in June or July, I believe, of this year. And he said, you should never make an important decision in the conference room. I go back to that a lot of times because, we sometimes feel pressured and we get in a spot where we're discussing something and we feel like we have to make a decision. But he actually said, you should never make an important decision about your business within the conference room. You need to get out. You need to look at different perspectives. And so this is akin to that, where we need to step away from our desk sometimes, walk, take a quick 20-minute power nap, however you like to do that, but get away from your desk. Number 8, force optimism so you don't get overwhelmed. And this is when you have a really large project or maybe a lot of things that need to be done. And the most important time to show the optimism is when you don't feel it, right? So we've all had those work days where we go into the office and we sit down and it's like, I'm never going to finish today, or this is going to be an impossible project to get done. And thinking optimistically and forcing ourselves to be optimistic about that project can actually increase your productivity because it increases our confidence and it makes it easier to get into those things and to get the job done. So look optimistically at your workload, at your projects, especially when you don't feel optimistic about it. And sometimes that takes a little bit of self-talk. It takes, us thinking rather than feeling and operating based on our thoughts rather than how we feel about something. But that can be an important step towards increasing the productivity in that task. And then lastly, I think this is a really important one to understand about ourselves. But number 9, capitalize on your critical hours. We're all different. And so because of that, we have different times that we tend to be more productive. If I have something that has to be done and I'm behind and I'm going to need to work some extra hours, I would much rather go to bed and get up really early the next morning, like 4 o'clock, and get it done. Dan, on the other hand, if he has something to get done and he knows he's going to have to put in extra hours, he tends to stay up really late. But that's just because of our difference in the way that our minds work and the way that our bodies feel at those times of the day. And so you need to know what your critical hours are. Now, hopefully, your critical hours don't always have to be at 4 a.m. or 1 a.m. or whatever it is. But even within the normal workday of, 8 to 5 or 7 to 5 or whatever your normal work hours are, there are probably certain times where you feel better and you do more during those times. So be aware of yourself enough to figure out what those times are. And then, in order to be more productive, plan your hardest or your most demanding or your most difficult tasks during those times when you know that your body and your mind is functioning at its optimal level. When you get the most demanding tasks done out of the way, then you're able to relax and maybe enjoy some of those tasks that are a little less demanding, maybe a little bit more enjoyable naturally to begin with. And you've also been more productive because those most difficult things you were able to give your best time to. So capitalize on your critical work hours. Well, that's 9 tips for increasing your productivity. Maybe some of them you've heard, maybe you've thought about many of them, maybe not. And so maybe you can take 1 or 2 of those and implement them and get some more done. I'd love to hear your feedback, maybe some tips that have really worked for you in increasing your productivity. Dan will be with you tomorrow on his Saturday show, and then my show will be coming up on Sunday. We'll be starting a new book topic called Talk Like TED, the 9 speaking secrets of the best TED Talk speakers. And so that book is put together by Carmen Gallo, and he's watched countless hours of TED Talks and come up with what he feels like are the 9 methods that are used and implemented by the very best speakers at the TED Talk. So very interesting, very practical. I think you'll find it enjoyable to hear, and I'd love to hear your feedback on that as well. So we'll see you this weekend for those podcasts, and then next week for some more interviews. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.